Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Lepri of Stokastic.com, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 14 FanDuel Contenders. Inside today's video, I'll be going in depth into my top 8 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends in terms of optimal percentage for the week. We're going to be talking about at number 8, that is the least optimal out of the group, and at number 1, shockingly, the most optimal player out of the group. But before we could get on into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help us out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. Today's video is brought to you guys by BetMGM, who we're going to be talking about a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 14 FanDuel Contenders. We begin with the quarterbacks at number 8 with Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Denver Broncos in Denver, 8,800. At number 7, we have Kirk Cousins, you like that, of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Lions in Detroit, 7,500. At number 6, we have Geno Smith of the Seahawks going up against the Carolina Panthers at home in Seattle, 7,700. At number 5, where the true breakdown begins, we got my guy Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Houston Texans at home in Jerry's World, $8,000 on FanDuel this week, projected using our Stokastic projections for 19.9 fantasy points in this matchup. The team is first in implied point total with 30.75, favored by 17.5 points, which is just so big, but obviously it makes sense. The Texans are really bad. 5.8 optimal percentage and a 6.4 boom percentage. My only worry about this spot for Dak Prescott is the fact that the Dallas Cowboys may be laying the hammer, the pipe, early on in this game to the Texans, to where they just pull Dak Prescott halfway through the game, kind of like we saw with Tua Tagovailoa up against this Texans team just a few weeks ago, and that does worry me about the upside of Dak Prescott since he could get benched. But at the same time, if he does end up getting benched in the third quarter, he might throw 4 touchdowns in the first quarter. So obviously there's a lot of upside with Dak. His price tag, $8,000, is pretty reasonable for the week, so I think I will have some lineups with Dak Prescott. At number 4, we have Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty of the Cincinnati Bengals, going up against the Cleveland Browns at home in Cincinnati, 8,300, projected for 20.5 fantasy points, 6th in implied point total with 26, 5.5 point favorites, 7.4 optimal percentage with a 5.9 boom percentage. Now, when it comes to Joe Burrow up against the Cleveland Browns, his track record is incredibly bad, as he is yet to beat the Cleveland Browns, and honestly, last time out this season, I know they were without Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow shit the bed in a big way in that spot. Now, I think a lot of people are going to remember. They have the member berries from South Park. They're going to remember that Joe Burrow played terrible last time out, and maybe that will make people panic off of playing Joe Burrow. Now, the Browns defense might be a little bit sneaky good. I still do think Joe Burrow should be just fine in this matchup, but I am a little bit worried about the history between these two teams as of recently, with Joe Burrow under center. At number 3, we have probably my favorite quarterback of the week, Jared Goff of the Lions, going up against the Minnesota Vikings at home in Detroit, 7,100, projected for 18.6 fantasy points, 3rd in implied point total with 27, favored by 2 points, 8.2 optimal percentage with a 7.8 boom percentage. This matchup reeks. You can smell it through the screen, and it doesn't reek in a bad way. It smells of points. This game should be a rock'em sock'em robots, high octane passing rate, high scoring game. Shit ton of points. I think Jared Goff, who got it done, was amazing against the Jaguars last week, could do the exact same thing up against a bad pass defense in the Vikings. And the Lions defense is bad, allowing this to really be a high-scoring game. I love Jared Goff this week, especially at only 7,100. At number 2, we have Jalen Hurts of the Eagles going up against the Giants in New York, 8,700, technically in New Jersey, projected for 22.4 fantasy points, 7th in implied point total with 25.75, favored by 7, 12.3 optimal percentage with a 9.8 boom percentage. My biggest worry about this game is that this is a interdivision game, and I think this one might not end up being as exciting as some people may think, but ultimately Jalen Hurts has so much upside with the amount of weapons that he has around him, as well as the rushing upside. We saw him lay a pipe for that ass like he was a plumber to the Tennessee Titans last week. Wouldn't surprise me if he did it to the Giants this week. At number 1, our number 1 most optimal quarterback of the week, and that is Josh Allen, quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, going up against the New York Jumbo Jets at home in Buffalo. Important to note, this game may have a little bit of a weather factor to it. It might snow a little bit, might be pretty cold. $8,700 for Josh Allen, the same exact price as Jalen Hurts, projected for 23.3 fantasy points, fifth in implied point total with 26.5, favored by 10, 14.9 optimal percentage with a 12.1 boom percentage. I think a lot of people are going to try to stay away from Josh Allen, especially the casual players this week, because of kind of the aura around the Jets, right? The Jets have this fantastic defense. Their offense is kind of hit or miss, but that defense, sheesh, it's amazing. I think people are going to get scared to play Josh Allen. At the end of the day, this Josh Allen that plays the Jets this time around is much better than the Josh Allen that played the Jets a couple of weeks ago. So I like Josh Allen a ton. Again, it's just really the price tag that's scaring me away. Now we move to the running back position, beginning at number 8 with Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals, going up against the Cleveland Browns at home in Cincinnati, 8,500. DeAndre Swift of the Detroit Lions going up against the Minnesota Vikings at home in Detroit, 7,200. At number 6, we have Travis Etienne Jr. of the Jaguars going up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee, 7,400. At number 5, where the true breakdown begins, we have Latavius Murray of the Denver Broncos going up against the Kansas City Chiefs at home in Denver, 6,200. Projected for 10.9 fantasy points, 22nd in implied point total for the team. Obviously, that team's a disaster. We could have predicted that easily, with 17.25 tied with the Ravens, 9.5 point dogs in this spot, 13.4 optimal percentage with a 2.5 boom percentage. Obviously, anytime you play any player on the Denver Broncos, you are kind of at the will of Mr. Unlimited, right? If Russell Wilson ends up having an atrocious game here, Latavius Murray probably won't perform, but ultimately, with how this team is severely injured, with the fact that Jerry Jeudy is pretty banged up, he's going to play, Cortland Sutton is going to miss, they have a lot of missing pieces here. The wide receiver core is not what they thought it was going to be going into the season, and with the Chiefs defense not being amazing, it really wouldn't surprise me at 6,200 if Latavius Murray did end up being a very solid play on this slate. He's not a guy that I'm banging the drum aggressively for, but I do see his path towards being really good for fantasy. At number 4, we have Dameon Pierce of the Texans going up against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas, 6,500, projected for 11.6 fantasy points, 26th in applied point total with 13.25, 17.5 point dogs, 14.8 optimal percentage with a 2.6 boom percentage. When it comes to Dameon Pierce, this is a guy that is immensely talented, that is stuck in the worst situation possible. The Houston Texans offense is so fucking bad that it is hard for me to advocate very heavily for Dameon Pierce, because it is very likely that the Dallas Cowboys are going to blow the back out of the Texans, and they're going to have to throw late into the game. And the fact is, Dameon Pierce isn't this elite pass-catching back. Now, he could deserve more targets. Like, I think he should be getting more targets, but he just isn't. I don't really like Dameon Pierce this week, if I'm being completely honest with you, and since I don't like him, he'll probably end up being the best running back play on the slate. At number 3, we have CMC, Christian McCaffrey of the Niners, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home in San Francisco, 8,500 Buckaroos, projected for 16 fantasy points, 15th in implied point total of 20.5, tied with the Browns, 3.5 point favorites, 15.5 optimal percentage, 9.2 boom percentage. While the price is quite hefty, I love Christian McCaffrey in this spot. Brock Purdy under center just tells me exactly what I need to know about this offense. They are going to be dumping the ball off at an absorbent rate. Christian McCaffrey is going to see a shit ton of touches in this matchup. I love Christian McCaffrey up against the Buccaneers defense. While the Bucs defense is pretty tough, I still think McCaffrey has an excellent game. But before we move on into the rest of the running backs, then the wide receivers and the tight ends, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends, our sponsor over at BetMGM. Now, if you're a brand new user to BetMGM and click on the link in the video description down below, you will receive a BetMGM risk-free bet of up to $1,000, as well as getting 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum, where all of our data is found in from Stokastic. So, you know, the optimal percentage I'm talking about, the boom percentage, our projections, those are all from our data from the website that you can get by activating that offer. Now, you have to bet at least $10, and then once your first bet is settled, once it qualifies, you will qualify for the Stokastic subscription. You will be emailed from BetMGM Sportsbook with instructions on how to redeem your 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. Last week on Sunday, I won $5,000 on DraftKings. I know it's a FanDuel video. $5,000 on DraftKings using all of the tools we have on the website. So please make sure, if you want to win just like I did, that you click on the link in the video description. It will help you out a ton. Plus, you get a $1,000 risk-free bet on BetMGM. Back on into things. Now we move to the number 2 running back here, which is Tony Pollard. Easily believable that Tony Pollard would be ranked inside of the top 5 at the running back position for this week. Again, the Houston Texans defense is absolute dog shit. $7,500 for Tony Pollard, projected for 13.9 fantasy points, first and implied point total with 30.75, favored by 17.5 points, 16 optimal percentage, and a 6.9 boom percentage. Very nice. I like. So when it comes to Tony Pollard, again, I do slightly worry about the benching factor when it comes to Pollard and Zeke, but I think it's more likely that Pollard and Zeke, even late into the game, are able to stay in compared to, like, Dak Prescott or CeeDee Lamb, because they don't need them getting hurt, right? But again, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they bench Pollard and Zeke in the second half. Who knows? This is an amazing spot. The biggest worry is just the benching factor. At number 1, we got Derrick Henry of the Titans going up against the Jaguars. No shocker that the guy who literally destroys the Jacksonville Jaguars every single time these two teams play is priced at $9,000 and is our most optimal running back. Who could have guessed that, right? Projected for 18.5 fantasy points, 13th in implied point total with 22.25, 3.5 point favorites, 23.7 optimal percentage with a 15.4 boom percentage. Again, we don't have to do some deep dive Michael Phelps style into Derrick Henry. You know why he's good, and you know why the matchup's good. I know he wasn't great last week, but that's against the Eagles that are great with Davis healthy against the run. This is the Jaguars. Come on. We know what's going to happen. Now we move to the wide receiver position. At number 8 with A.J. Brown of the Eagles going up against the Giants in New York, 8,400. At number 7, we have Jamar Chase of the Bengals going up against the Browns, 8,700. At number 6, we have Jerry Jeudy of the Broncos going up against the Chiefs, 6,500. At number 5, we have Kendall Hinton of the Broncos going up against the Chiefs, 5,100. Now, Kendall Hinton, everyone kind of knows him for that time when he had to play quarterback for the Broncos during that COVID season. Now, he is just a receiver on the team, projected for 8 fantasy points, 22nd in implied point total with 17.25, tied with the Baltimore Ravens, 9.5 point dogs, 11.3 optimal percentage, 1.6 boom percentage. Again, anytime you're playing any player on the Denver Broncos, it's a little bit scary. Got to plug your nose a little bit and snorkel your way over there. But at the end of the day, at the price tag, in a matchup where, like, the Chiefs defense really isn't the greatest against the pass, like, I really do see the pathway towards Kendall Hinton being an optimal wide receiver on the week. Next up, we move to number 4, Laviska Shenault of the Carolina Panthers going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, 5,200, projected for 18.8 fantasy points, 17th in implied point total with 20.25, 3.5 point dogs, 15.1 optimal percentage with a 2.1 boom percentage. The Seahawks have a relatively underrated defense, but maybe now with mono man Sam Darnold under center, this team is going to be able to be accelerated to its peak. Maybe Laviska Shenault really is the guy that a lot of people thought he would be in Jacksonville. He's a very interesting gadget player. If I played Kendall Hinton, there is no way I'm playing both him and Laviska Shenault, but they are both interesting in their spots. Again, when our projections like a receiver that, you know, you might feel a little bit uncomfortable playing, a lot of the time they end up panning out. Just ask Nico Collins last week. At number 3, we have Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Lions in Detroit, 9,300. Obviously, a humongous price tag on Jefferson. Makes sense, though. He's going up against the putrid Lions defense, projected for 17 fantasy points, 8th in implied point total with 25, 2-point dog, 17.6 optimal percentage with a 15.5 boom percentage. Again, this matchup has all of the makings to be a tit-for-tat, high-scoring, Rock'em Sock'em Robots-esque affair. While Justin Jefferson is expensive as a motherfucker, I am going to have either him or the second guy here, Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Lions going up against the Vikings, 8,600. In a lot of my lineups. Projected for 16.3 fantasy points, 3rd in implied point total with 27, favored by 2 fantasy points, 18.1 optimal percentage, and a 12.5 boom percentage. Again, this matchup reeks of a high-scoring game. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been fantastic. Chef's kiss, magnifique over the last 2 games, and the Vikings defense got plowed by Garrett Wilson last week. They're not great against the pass. I think this is yet another good spot for Amon-Ra St. Brown. He probably would have been, if I was doing this, he would be my number 1 most optimal play because I love Amon-Ra. But at number 1, we got CeeDee Lamb, the Lambster of the Dallas Cowboys, going up against the Texans at home in Jerry's World, 8,200, projected for 15.5 fantasy points, 1st in implied point total with 30.75, favored by 17.5 points, 21.5 optimal percentage, 14.8 boom percentage. CeeDee Lamb here should be in for a huge spot against Houston. Again, the only to just just keep on jumping on the same take because there's nothing really much to say here. This is a great matchup, a wet dream matchup. This could be an incredible game out of CD where he scores 3 fucking touchdowns, but this could also be a game where he's on the bench in the second half early on. Now we move to the tight end position. At number 8, we have Dawson Knox. One time, if you're with me, the Bills going up against the Jets, 5,000. Mock Andrews of the Ravens going up against the Steelers in Pittsburgh, 6,800. At 6, we have Dalton Schultz of the Cowboys going up against the Texans, 6,200. At number 5, we have the Viking himself in a revenge game. TJ Hawkinson of the Vikings going up against the Lions in Detroit, 6,500, projected for 9.9 fantasy points. 8th in applied point total with 25. 2-point dogs, 9.9 optimal percentage, 8 boom percentage. Now, when it comes to revenge games, normally the players aren't thinking about it as much as we, the viewers, are. It's like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be so fun. Hawkinson versus the Lions. He probably doesn't give a rat's ass. But at the end of the day here, this is yet another incredible matchup. The price point does kind of sway me away from him. I do like the guys that we have more optimal than him. At number 4, we have Njoku of the Browns going up against the Bengals in Cincinnati, 5,600. It seems like Njoku himself thinks he's going to play, but it is still up in the air, something to monitor up until Sunday. Projected for 7.8 fantasy points, 15th in applied point total with 20.5, 5.5 point dogs, 10.2 optimal percentage with a 4.5 boom percentage. I do like David Njoku in this spot. I'm incredibly worried that Deshaun Watson is incredibly washed up, but maybe the game environment got to him last week. He's going against the Texans. It's his return game. He's got to shake the rust off. Should be a little bit better this week. You'd have to hope, right? If you're a Browns fan, if he doesn't pick it up here, you're going to start to panic, especially with the fact that over the last 4 or 5 games, when it's Burrow versus the Browns have won every single time. At number 3, we move to Pat Freiermuth of the Steelers going up against the Ravens, 5,800 in Pittsburgh, projected for 8.5 fantasy points, 18th in applied point total with 19.25, 2-point favorites, 11 optimal percentage, 6.1 boom percentage. Pat Freiermuth continues to be peppered with targets, salt-based style, game in and game out. The matchup against the Ravens is relatively decent. We just got to hope that Kenny Pickett finds Freiermuth like 8 or 9 times because this guy needs to get in the end zone multiple times in one game, and this might be the spot up against the Ravens. At number 2, we have Dulcich of the Broncos going up against the Chiefs at home in Denver, 5,400, projected for 7.9 fantasy points, 22nd implied point total with the Ravens, tied with the Ravens, 17.25, 9.5 point dogs, 12.6 optimal percentage, 5.9 boom percentage. Again, anytime you're playing a player that's linked with Russell Wilson, you feel disgusting. It feels gross. There's a pit in your stomach when you throw Greg Dulcich in your lineup, but it paid off last week. It paid off the first 3 weeks of the season when Dulcich was playing. I know he wasn't playing at the beginning of the season, but once he came off the IR, this is a matchup that I do kind of like against Kansas City. Got a feeling I'm going to have a lot of Dulcich because he's only $5,400, as well as a lot of Pat Freiermuth. And at number 1, we have, you guessed it, Travis Kelce. What a shocker. I know everyone wasn't thinking Kelce was going to be in the top 8 list of the Chiefs going up against the Broncos in Denver, $8,000. Kelce was awful last week, and he's awful because he's so much money and he didn't play great. But, like, he still did decent, right? But compared to Kelce's standards, like, you have to be really good to pay off the price that we pay for Kelce. Projected for 13.7 fantasy points, 4th in applied point total with 26.75, 9.5 point favorite, 16.5 optimal percentage, 18 boom percentage. I don't think that people are going to let the fact that he shit the bed last week linger too much in his head. I think he's going to be just solid this week against the Denver Broncos. I don't think anyone's going to be panicking away from Travis Kelce. And obviously, you know why you play Travis Kelce. We don't have to sit here for 5 minutes and pretend that you have no idea why Travis Kelce would be a good start. Before we get on out of here, though, I would like to also let you guys know that if you guys want our NFL pass for 3 days, everything that Stokastic has to offer, link in the video description. It's free for 3 days. So make sure that you click on the link in the video description. It's like a nice test run, test drive. You wouldn't buy a car without test driving it. So make sure you guys check that out. Link in the video description. Make sure you also check out BetMGM as well. Link in the video description. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy!